Hello and welcome to Uniform Health, the fitness channel that takes a holistic approach to diet and exercise. So what we're going to be talking about today is something called oil pulling. What the fuck is that? Well, I was wondering the same thing, so I did some YouTube searches and I found some great people talking about oil pulling and what they saw for benefits. Basically what oil pulling is, to give you a quick lowdown, is that you take some oil and you put it in your mouth, about a tablespoon, and you switch it around for 5 to 15 minutes. And this is supposed to give you better oral hygiene. My question is does this shit actually work? There's a lot of testimonies and a lot of people talking about it and the benefits, but where the hell is the scientific evidence? I mean, you don't necessarily need science to tell you if there's a benefit, but what this video hopefully will do is to push you in the directions that's saying that, you have something. There is something there that science is providing and researching, that there is benefits to oil pulling. And basically to tell people who think you're fucking crazy that there is some science behind what you're doing. And let's get into that. Let's get into the mechanisms by which oil pulling could be beneficial. And most of what is revolving around here is that there's an antimicrobial effect that some oils have. Most of what is being researched is coconut and sesame seeds oil, as far as I know of. And there's pretty limited evidence on this, so to say that, oh, it's flaxseed or oh, it's this and that, it's kind of hard to do because there's not necessarily that much specific evidence on these on this practice. So of the limited evidence I was able to gather, the mechanisms for are as follows. There's an antimicrobial effect from some oils. There's also a process called spawnification. This is essentially making soap. So what happens when you make soap, the way it cleans is through these micelles, and attached to the plaque that's on your gums. When that happens, the plaque gets suspended within the micelle, or the fat, and gets uplifted and goes into the solution of your mouth. And then you keep swishing around, and this keeps happening, and the antimicrobial effect keeps going on with these, killing the biofilms on your mouth, or on your teeth, and you clean your mouth. So the other thing that enhances this is there's an element of emulsification. This is when there's a bunch of tiny micelles. So when you swish it really hard, there's a lot of little tiny micelles. This increases surface area, which increases the interactions of the antimicrobial effects and also increases this spawnification process. The last thing, and this is some pretty weak evidence for this, but I figured I'd share it, is that there might be a competitive bacterial advantage, meaning that some good bacteria may not be killed with these antimicrobials, but it could be potentially killed. It could potentially let live these good bacteria. So you're killing the bad, keeping the good, and what happens is you get a competitive bacteria advantage. There's a couple different locations for good bacteria. Your nose, your mouth, your stomach, your skin, and your genitals. And these are actually a huge part of our immune system, and so that being the case, having things like certain lactobacillus bacteria in our mouth opposed to these other, salmonella and staphylococcus bacteria could pose an advantage. Again, the evidence is weak. So those are the mechanisms. You have the antimicrobial, you have spawnification and emulsification, and you have a potential competitive bacteria. Now, there is some oils that are more heavily researched than others, and that being sesame seed oil and coconut oil. Coconut oil seems to have something called Larrick Acid. That composes about 50% of coconut oil. Now, it has been shown in certain research studies that you could get a log to a 2.5 log reduction. Now, to give you some understanding, pasteurization gives you about a 7 log reduction depending upon time and temperature, but that's what they aim for in industry, is a 7 log reduction. And what this really means is that, say you have 100 bacteria and you get a 2 log. That means that now you have 1 bacteria. So if you have 100 bacteria and you have a 1 log reduction, that means that you have 10 bacteria. So Larrick acid has been shown to get about a log to a 2.5 log reduction in certain bacteria, in certain bad bacteria. So there's that advantage. Also, sesame seed oil seems to do something similar, but keep in mind that some evidence, some people say yes, it affects these bad bacteria. Some people say no, it doesn't affect these certain bad bacteria. And with each species of bacteria, you have different resistances and things. So keeping that in mind, there's going to be some wish-washiness that goes on. But again, if it's going to work for you, if it seems to be working for you, then why not use it, right? So what I want to give you is if you're trying to get interested in, coconut oil pulling, and this is probably something that you're really interested in, is there any advantage over oil pulling versus mouthwash? And here's the thing, is that there does seem to be an effect of using oil pulling to reduce instances of gingivitis and enhance gum health and enhance the whiteness of your teeth. This is only seen about 30 days after using oil pulling. And the thing is about oil pulling, obviously, is that you're washing for 15 minutes, and with and with mouthwash, you're only washing for about a minute. That said, the instances of gingivitis seem to be pretty comparable when you do mouthwash versus oil pulling. So the amount of reduction you get are fairly comparable. So you could say that oil pulling, mouthwash is still better, but oil pulling poses some significant benefits in that some organisms are resistant to certain antimicrobials, such as potentially the mouthwash that you've been using for 10 years, and not resistant to the coconut oil. But that could go vice versa as well. So there's a lot of different things you could also do to enhance the effect of oil pulling. We talked about there's antimicrobials in certain oils. So what you could do is potentially blend oils together and get a stronger antimicrobial effect. Also, you could do something like add capsicum from habanero peppers and things that peppers that have that hot element to them. That's from this this compound called capsicum. So if you squeeze some pepper into your oil, and then also bound that to a bunch of different oils together, and made your own mouthwash with this oil pulling, you can get a enormously enhanced. You could potentially enhance the effect of this oil pulling. Now, the thing is, like I said, this is relatively young science, so we don't really know whether or not that will actually have an increased beneficial effect. What we do know is that some things have antimicrobial properties within them, and some things can kill microbes. So you could potentially make a mouthwash that is better than the one that you use. But you know, it's relatively young, and it's kind of too hard to say. What we can say is that oil pulling is better than just brushing your teeth alone without toothpaste. You still should floss, and I would still suggest you brush your teeth with toothpaste. Now, whether or not you want to take the mouthwash or the oil pulling, that's up to you. I think that you could probably interchange them. It may be okay. You're not running that much risk of potentially having a side effect from getting cavities if you use this oil pulling method. And there's also some advantages, being that it sort of soaks your mouth and doesn't give you that dry element. And for coconut oil, it's an enjoyable flavor for some people. And then you're not spitting out mouthwash for the next 30 minutes. And you don't have that really dry taste in your mouth. And so those are basically the elements of oil pulling that could potentially be beneficial. So I walked you through the mechanisms, the pros and cons. Hopefully you got some of that. And also, I'll tell you this, is that I currently don't really do oil pulling. I did it once with coconut oil, and it was interesting. But the thing is, for me, is I don't have 15 minutes to wash my mouth. And I don't think right now there's enough evidence, or there's enough things telling me that mouthwash is bad. I know fluoride, we could talk about that forever. But I don't think that there's enough things to tell me that compared to mouthwash, that oil pulling is better. I'd rather have my extra 14 minutes to do whatever else, and that has an additive effect. 14 minutes, but 14 minutes over the course of a lifetime, hey, that could add up to something. So I don't do oil pulling. Hopefully this has given you some evidence, and hopefully given you some understanding and a uniform perspective on oil pulling. So like, subscribe, comment, tell me I'm an idiot, tell me I don't know this, or better yet, try and convince me that oil pulling is good, or try and convince me that oil pulling is bad. I'd rather have a sort of debate opposed to telling me that I'm a fucking idiot, because that really doesn't help much. It doesn't progress the conversation at all. So, and I'd like to have people on both sides, because that's really what you need to do. You shouldn't just listen to my perspective. You should listen to the dude who fucking loves oil pulling, and the dude who says that it's a bunch of shit, and then combine the perspective. Provided that those are fairly intelligent people, combine their perspective and provide yourself with your own perspective. So get a multifaceted, uniform perspective on this. Hopefully I have helped mediate you into an understanding of how to do this, and provided some studies, which are linked below, in order to educate yourself. Alright, well, thank you very much. I've taken up enough of your time, and I've already said the like, comment, subscribe thing. So, have a great day, and stay healthy.